This half hour being brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Auto, home, life, business, boat, motorcycle, RV. Yes, we're still in the Medicare open enrollment period through December 7th. You may need some help from an expert. Well, they have plenty of them that are just happen to be great people, great pros, all at Purdy Insurance. Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com. Speaking of great people, great pros, we bring in Greg Pickel on 3.com, Blue White Illustrated. Greg, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure.
Steve, that was far too kind, but I'm glad to be back with you. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, and thank you for asking. All right, so let's start. I want to start with wrestling because Jack Ham and I did watch literally all of it on Friday night because it was on BTN. And that's the 15th ranked team in the country. And even when Penn State ran out unranked guys against ranked guys, they dominated all the way through. I know it's just a start, but Greg, how impressive was the start?
Well, it's about what you come to expect from Cale Sanderson, his coaching staff, and his program they've now been running, obviously, with tremendous success for so many years. You know, it's incredible that you see a Penn State team that, by and large, mostly just came off of the freestyle circuit. They had 7 of the 10 Team USA wrestlers at U23 World Championships, one of which, of course, was Josh Barr, who was hurt. His replacement, redshirt freshman Connor Mirasola, just goes out and majors. One of the top guys in the country at 197 pounds in Penn State. Had success all up and down the lineup. I mean, I don't think anything really described that match better than Levi Haynes having to go into concussion protocol and go into the back to get checked out. And then, less than 90 seconds later, he's back out on the mat. And less than 90 seconds after that, he gets a pin. The only one of the match for Penn State en route to a 8 of 10 bonus point victory. So, yeah, it was impressive, Steve. Penn State certainly is looking to be firing on all cylinders again this year. It always starts the season well. It always ends the season well since Cale Sanderson's taken over. That's been the theme pretty much throughout his tenure, and certainly got off to about maybe not as good of a start as you could have asked for, because 10 pins is probably what Cale Sanderson would call that, but darn close to it.
It's also been, this is on the tougher side, but they always talk about the curtains being there for basketball when they play. Well, they were there for wrestling the other night, too. They ended up drawing about 8,000. So that's 2 of the last 4 that they've had in the Jordan Center, where they've been in the 7,000 to 8,000 range. I know Cale doesn't like doing more than one in there. Is there any concern on their part? Because, I mean, when they go to Rec Hall, they have to wedge people in.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think that obviously I think a lot of it has to do with when these matches have been held. I think I don't have the list in front of me, but I feel like this is not the most recent Friday night one. Certainly there were a couple last year as well. So, I think if they're going to go over there, it probably behooves them to do more Saturday matches there. And I realize that obviously that building's used for a lot of things, especially on the weekend, so it's easier said than done. But, yeah, I mean, I do think that you look at the rest of this schedule, and they're going to have some other Friday night BJC matches. And, I mean, we're not saying anything that nobody doesn't already know. It's that State College can be a tough place to get to, and there's a reason the football team has no interest in doing Friday night games, because it's tough to get, everyone there for. And especially true when you're talking about a night like last Friday where you have Penn State hockey at home and wrestling at home. The wrestling match started at 6, hockey started at 7. I can only imagine how unfun it was to try and travel around the stadium area in State College on Friday. So, yeah, I think all that stuff plays into it, and, certainly we'll see how the rest of these BJC ones play out this year.
Yeah, good point. And the fact that it started at 6. I remember when Penn State wrestled Ohio State a couple of years ago, it was 1 versus 2, and it was a 6 o'clock Friday match. And the line of cars, because I had come out of football practice, and the line of cars as I was driving home way down College Avenue, but that's because it was a 6 o'clock start and people work. It's like, it makes it difficult.
Yeah, it does. There's no doubt about that.
All right, so now let's get to the football part of it, because I know you were in East Lansing because I saw you there. It was great to see you as well. I want to start with the defense. Greg, they've only given up 17 points over the last 6 quarters of play. What are you seeing from this group defensively at this point?
Yeah, I know you and Jack talked about it on the broadcast, but it's just been the re-emphasis, I guess you could say, on the pass rush. Terry Smith just wrapped up speaking at Beaver Stadium about, I don't know, maybe an hour ago at this point. And he talked about the fact that they put that Prowler package back in, the one that Manny Diaz had brought to Penn State, and really focus on using the extra bodies on the field to generate a pass rush. And we have seen that. I mean, it goes without saying that they battered Mendoza from Indiana, and that, somehow that kid kept getting back up and was able to lead them to victory. But Michigan State not as fortunate to have that kind of a quarterback. And I'm not going to try and pronounce his name. Credit to you guys for having to do it on air for 4 hours back on Saturday. But the Michigan State quarterback, was obviously not up to the task of fending off that Penn State pass rush. And when you combine that with the fact that Michigan State's offensive line is among the worst in the country when it comes to giving up sacks, it was a perfect storm for Penn State to get right in that area. And I think that, when you look at the point totals surrendered over the last couple of weeks, it goes in hands with the yardage surrendered, and obviously the pass rush has improved. And, that's why I think when you look at these last two games, certainly Nebraska's going to come into Penn State and bring a new, different quarterback than the one that started the season with, and he can run and he can throw, but he's going to have to contend with a Penn State pass rush that's doing a lot better than it was a month ago at this time.
Yeah, no question about that. Dennis Sutton has been an absolute force in the last couple of games. What have you seen in the resurrection of his game that has made a difference?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that as they get more of a pass rush from the entirety of the front seven, it opens up opportunities for rush lanes for him, and he's been taking advantage of them. And, Justin Lustig figuring out that this guy should be on the punt block team. Boy, talk about a revelation that probably is not getting enough attention locally, let alone nationally. But he's now the leader in block punts, I believe, with 3 or tied for lead, one or the other. But he has been terrific in that area, and that pass rushing mindset has helped him there, and it's also helped him over the last couple of games make some big plays for this Penn State defense. So, he's the guy. I thought Terry Smith said it well after the game in East Lansing on Saturday night. Guy that had every reason to potentially opt out if he wanted to and not continue playing this Penn State season once they got the 6 losses, once the chances of making the playoffs came out of reach. And instead, he's probably, I don't have the snap sheet in front of me, but he's probably played darn near as many snaps as anyone. Him and Wheatley seem to never come off the field. So those two guys, two veteran leaders of this team, just have done a really impressive job, not just keeping the defense together and helping it improve, but also leading this team at a time when, again, it can't be easy to do so. Certainly will be easier this week coming off a win, but still, you're talking about a team with 4 wins on the year and is still fighting for bowl eligibility. So certainly not where anyone expects them to be, but those two guys have played a big role in helping them get at least back to the winning ways on Saturday.
Well, Jack Ham and I have had a little fun with Denai, and here's the reason. Jack, of course, in a season had 3 block punts. Dennis Sutton has 3 block punts. Jack Ham wore 33. Dennis Sutton wears 33. Jack Ham's birthday is December 23rd. Dennis Sutton's birthday is December 23rd. So we've had a little fun with him about it. About okay, wait a minute. 50 years apart here. Amazing.
Wow, I was not aware of all that, Steve, but that's impressive. And certainly I'm sure Jack sees some of the way he used to play in Denai, and Denai, I'm sure, has certainly molded some of the way he plays after what he saw from Jack on film, for sure.
Yeah, no question. But it's just one of those fun facts that means nothing, which we specialize in. All right. So, offensively, I felt in the last quarter and a half against Indiana, Penn State's offensive line was taking over the game. I felt in the last quarter and a half of the Michigan State game, Penn State's offensive line was taking over the game. A, did you see the same thing I thought I saw? And B, what are you seeing from that group overall?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the best and worst part of what you just said is that Penn State did take over in the second half of those games, I thought, up front. And against Indiana, if they had done it for a full 60 minutes, I think we're talking about a, obviously potentially different outcome. And certainly against Michigan State, that's part of the reason why that game was 14-10 until they all just decided, the blockers, the tight ends, the receivers, and the running backs obviously decided enough's enough. We're going to go on this long 13-play touchdown drive and put this game out of reach. Now, you could certainly make the argument that the way Michigan State was playing offense, even having 14 points, which Penn State did at that point, was enough to probably have that game out of reach. But certainly you never know what can happen. You always want to add points and insurance when you can. And the Penn State offensive line did that. So, yeah, I think now The next step for those guys is just putting it together for a full 60 minutes and dominating the opponent from start to finish, and putting themselves in a spot where they don't need maybe a 13-play punishing drive to put a game out of reach, because they've already done it through the first and second quarters to put themselves in a better situation for the second half. So yeah, I think they're again, it's kind of like this whole team, Steve. There's moments where they look like the guys that we thought they were going to be and look better than their record indicates, and then there's moments in each game where they look like, the guys they've been for much of the year and why they are where they are record-wise. So, but yeah, I agree with you that certainly second half of those games, those blockers up front took over.
All right. Now I want to get to Ethan Grunkemeyer. There's no doubt he made some really nice throws. One was the 75-yard touchdown pass to Ross where he never had to break stride and it was put right into the bucket. The fourth down throw to Pena, got a first down, great throw. The throw to Pena that set up the first touchdown, really good throw. But on the other hand, on the throw to Pena for the first down, Ross is open in the end zone. Fourth quarter, Rapplier is wide open by about 20 to 25 yards, and he didn't see him. So what did you think of his performance on Saturday?
Yeah, I think he's a redshirt freshman who doesn't have all the tools just yet, to be a starter. He was thrust into this role. I think you got to commend him for the way he handled, he's 3 of his 4 starts have been on the road now, and certainly the moment doesn't seem too big for him, but there's just times where he gets a little antsy in the pocket. I think he wants to leave the pocket too soon, and that's how he ends up missing. Rapplier is the one everyone remembers from that game. He was literally, I don't know if there was a Michigan State guy within 20 yards of him, but there were some other instances too where there were downfield plays to be made. That's where I think Andy Kolecki gets a little bit too much of the blame. Because there are times he's calling for those downfield passes, those shot plays, or just plays that have routes that all of your receivers are downfield. Now, look, sometimes they're not open to throw it to, but when they are, it's not a guarantee Grunk sees them and then makes the throw that you would think he would make. So, I think that he's, by and large, for what he is, a redshirt freshman who suddenly became a starting quarterback, I think he's playing, I don't want to say as well as you can expect because that's probably underselling his abilities, but certainly I think when you look at what he's been able to do, you've seen growth in each game, and you've also seen that youth show through in each game so far, I feel like. So, we'll see what he can do over the final 2 weeks here. But, yeah, I do think that as a part of this whole downfield passing conversation, that I think fairly has been the focus of the media and the fans the last few weeks, I do think Andy Kolecki probably gets a little bit too much of the blame before it's not happening, because there are times like the couple of instances you just mentioned at Michigan State in other games as well, where the chances to take shots have been there, and Penn State has to take them.
Yeah, no. There's no doubt in my mind Andy's received too much of the blame because, it doesn't mean – it does. Like, every coordinator wants something back. They all do. I mean, I'll talk to them and like, I wish I'd done with this, or, Mandy would tell me I wish I'd done that, or Brent would tell me I wish I'd done that. But like that's a couple times in a game. A lot of times you need people to execute. And I think, look, I thought Grunkemeyer gave a really good account of himself in the game at Iowa. I thought he was even a little bit better against Ohio State. I thought he, to this point, played his best game against Indiana, right? And he showed he was a redshirt freshman, I felt, for the most part, in the game against Michigan State, because I think that happens.
Right, it certainly does. And I just think that we do have to remember that this is a guy who, number one, certainly never thought he'd be in this role, and certainly you can say all you want about how guys prepare like they're the starter or think like they could be the starter, but you don't know, how you're going to handle yourself in that role until you're actually there. And I feel like he's handled himself, again, for the role he's been thrust into, about as well as you could hope for. Yeah. But, there's certainly plays he might like back, and there were certainly plays to be made that he hasn't made. But, by and large, I think that for where Penn State is in terms of its quarterback situation, he's given them, as honest of an effort as he can and as good of an effort as he can. And as long as you see improvement each week, I think that's all you can ask for.
Totally agree with that. All right. So Terry Smith got rather emotional about the number of text messages, about being carried off the field. He got very emotional about it. In that moment, as you watched him talk about it, what were you thinking about what all this means to him?
I was thinking, I'm not sure how anyone could answer 1,600 messages, which is what he said he had on his 2 phones and his Twitter account after the game. But, yeah, no, I just think that you knew it from the moment he was named the interim Penn State head coach when he talked after Pat Kraft held his news conference 2 days or the day after, I guess, firing James Franklin, that this meant the world to Terry Smith. And, there's just each time something happens, whether it's Penn State gets close to a win, whether it finally gets its win, this isn't the first time it seemed like he was close to tears in a news conference, because he just is so proud of what he has accomplished at Penn State, so proud of Penn State, and so hopeful, I think, for its future and what he can do to make it as best as possible, that he just becomes overwhelmed with emotion. Who can blame him? I mean, certainly he's a guy who was Penn State through and through. When they talked, Brent Key, the Georgia Tech coach, talked a couple weeks ago about cut me open and see what colors I bleed, I think is what he said. Well, if you did that to Terry Smith, it'd be blue and white, Steve. You know that as well as I do. So the guy loves the school that he's coaching for, and, I'm sure it has to be emotional to be in a spot where you were a player and you've been an assistant coach, and now you are in the history books as somebody who has won a game as the head coach at Penn State. I just can't, imagine what that must mean to him. And certainly, as you saw, and if you haven't seen, we have the video over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, but just the way his emotions came out when talking about the aftermath of that Michigan State game just tells you all that you need to know about him and about what Penn State means to him, and also why the players want to play for him. Like, I don't know how you can watch the press conference videos he does or the in-house videos Penn State shares with him, and I'm not sure how anyone could look at those and, wonder why guys want to play for him, wonder why guys want to get fired up for him. It's pretty easy to see as far as I'm concerned, and this was today another, obvious piece of evidence of that.
And what have you thought of the job he's done keeping this together while also having to be the head coach, which means you have to make head coaching decisions?
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I just think the way he kind of talks about the job that he has now and all the things that go into it, I just don't I don't know if there's enough appreciation for what he is doing at Penn State. The wins, losses, outcome on the field, all those things are obviously things we are paid to discuss and do discuss and evaluate and, so on and so forth. But I just don't think, the fact that how big this organization is, how hard it is to run a college football organization and to be thrust into that role. I mean, look, he was James's associate head coach. He's been on the staff for all 12 years, so he knows, secondhand what kind of things go on. But I'm sure he wasn't in every meeting James had to attend, and I'm sure he was not part of every conversation James had to have. I'm sure he's part of many of them. But until you're in that role, there's no way for anyone to know what it's like to, deal with all the things you have to deal with. So for him to be able to take this head on and get things fixed on the field and have a close game with Indiana, mostly respectable showing at Ohio State, and then win at Michigan State, I think it says the world about what he's been able to do to keep this thing together and make the decisions that need to be made. And, again, could it be better? Does he reflect on it and wish he did this or that to the point you made a few minutes ago? I'm sure. But, by and large, I think so far you have to judge his tenure by not just the wins and losses, but what you've seen on the field effort-wise. And there's been no lack of effort from Terry Smith, his players, and his coaches since the coaching change happened.
Greg, outstanding work as always. Really appreciate the great work you do every day for On3 and for Blue White Illustrated.
Thanks so much, Steve. We'll see you this weekend. Have a good one.
You bet, man. It's Greg Pickel. On3.com and Blue White Illustrated. This half hour brought to you by Purdy Insurance, Market Street in Sunbury. Go to purdyinsurance.com as we continue here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.